Where does the United States Constitution prevent the head of the executive branch, who's created by the Constitution, the President of the United States, who was elected by you through the Electoral College, who swore to uphold the Constitution at the time and the place he was expected to do it? He's upholding the Constitution, his campaign promises. Where does it say in the Constitution? Where? That a President of the United States cannot reorganize aspects of the federal government. It doesn't. So in this Constitution, I ask you this question. Federal district judges don't exist. They're created. Let me ask you an even more fundamental question. We have what's called judicial review. You're hearing these legal analysts all over the place. Oh, I'm a professor. Oh, I'm a former federal prosecutor. Oh, I'm just a stupid host on CNN and MSNBC, and I know everything. And what do they keep saying? They keep using authoritarian, anti-democratic, he's running a coup, the same propaganda, the same crap as before. But now they're saying all these things he's doing are illegal and unconstitutional. You're at the right place at the right time. You're with me. And let me explain this. Number one, not a single one of these departments is in the Constitution. Number two, this fourth branch of government with 2.5 million civilian employees is not in the Constitution. None of it. Number three, judicial review. This is really going to upset people. Forget about Marbury versus Madison, which is the big judicial review case that essentially says the Supreme Court, and therefore the lower courts, have authority to make judgments over whether or not a law is constitutional or not. That was a Supreme Court decision, Marbury versus Madison. That is not in the Constitution. I'm talking about the Constitution. I'm not talking about court decisions. The Constitution. There's no judicial review. So it's an implied power. It's a necessary power. Somebody's got to make these decisions. But if it's an implied power, it's not an affirmative, granted, authoritative power in the Constitution under Article 3 for the one court they created, the Supreme Court, then how is it that all these hundreds and hundreds of trial federal courts created by Congress and the President under a Judiciary Act, how is it that they have so much power over the executive branch? They don't. If you believe in the Constitution, they don't. Now, you see these people going on TV saying all these things Trump's doing are unconstitutional. Show me. Where? Where does the United States Constitution prevent the head of the executive branch, who's created by the Constitution, the President of the United States, who was elected by you through the Electoral College, who swore to uphold the Constitution at the time and the place he was expected to do it? He's upholding the Constitution, his campaign promises. Where does it say in the Constitution? Where? That a President of the United States cannot reorganize aspects of the federal government. It doesn't. Those aspects of the federal government didn't even exist. Where does it say in the Constitution that he doesn't have some control over the employees that serve the executive branch, who report indirectly, but nonetheless, to him, through intermediaries, his cabinet and other officials? Where does it say that they don't? Nowhere. They don't even exist in the Constitution. Where does it say that he can't freeze part of the spending, particularly spending that was pushed by the prior administration on the way out the door? These radical left-wing grants and so forth and so on, discretionary spending. It doesn't. None of that is in the Constitution. And I could go down the list. Now, if there's a federal statute that has been passed by Congress and signed by a president that says there's certain things he cannot do, even though those are of questionable constitutionality, that's at least colorable. So where are those statutes? How come they're not citing them? How come these legal analysts, these professors, these former federal prosecutors, how come none of them are telling us where to go? What are we supposed to look at? Now, to my knowledge, they don't exist. Maybe there's one or two. What's going on here? You have Democrat attorneys general, a cabal, who are colluding, who got together and said, everything Trump does, we're going to bring a lawsuit. And these Democrat attorneys general represent maybe a score of states, maybe a few more. And so what they're doing is within their left-wing jurisdictions, the most liberal left-wing cities that they can bring a federal challenge, a petition. That's what they're doing. Seattle, Washington, Boston, Providence, Rhode Island. Does it get more liberal than these cities? They're going into these cities because what do they know? They're liberal. Now, the vast majority of judges in these cities, in these inner cities, have been appointed by Democrats. Now, I looked at the judges in these cases that are trying to sabotage Trump. All but 2 were appointed by either Obama, Biden, or Clinton. You've got 2, Royce Lamberth, who's a judge in Washington, D.C., who was appointed by Reagan. I've known him well, and I refuse to speak to him ever again because he's gone off the cliff on the January 6 cases. He despises Donald Trump. He's involved in the federal prison cases where Donald Trump has ordered, we don't care if you think you've transitioned, if you have through medicines and surgery, if you're a biological male, you're a male and you're staying in a male prison. He says, well, there may be some fundamental constitutional issues there. Like what? Like what? And he points out in his opinion there's at least 16, no more than 16, but at least 16 individuals in the federal prison system who were males, who claim to have become females, who are now in the federal women's prison system. Trump says, no, we're not doing that. The judge says, well, there's no overwhelming case to be made that Trump is right, therefore I'm going to put a hold on that, we're going to take a look at it. In fact, it would seem to me, he says, that the arguments seem to lean towards the individual against the state. You believe this?
For all this and much more, sign up for Levin TV.